The red light blinked on and off above the door. Taman stared at it, his crystalline skin reflecting the harsh glow. The light meant failure. Again, he stood in the testing chamber surrounded by broken equipment he could not fix. The environmental control system still hissed and sparked. Black smoke rose from one panel. The smell of burned circuits filled the air. He had tried everything, used every diagnostic tool, followed every procedure he had memorized. Nothing worked. Through the observation window, dozens of faces looked down at him. Students from the academy, instructors, important officials. They all watched him fail. Their disappointment pressed against the glass like a physical weight. In the back row, Taman saw his father. Governor Hyunwoo sat perfectly still. His face showed nothing, but Taman knew. He knew the shame his father felt. The governor's son had failed again. The fifth time, the chamber door opened with a soft hiss. Instructor Bora walked in. Her tall frame moved with precise steps. She glanced at the smoking equipment, then at Taman. Her eyes held pity. Taman hated that look more than anger. Instructor Bora said quietly, "The test is over. Please return to your quarters." Taman nodded. He could not speak. His throat felt tight. He walked past the broken machines, past the instructor, out into the bright corridor. Behind him he heard the whispers start. They always did. The halls of Valaris Station gleamed with polished metal. Lights embedded in the walls cast everything in soft blue. Beautiful. Perfect. Everything here was perfect except him. Two students passed him in the hallway. Gina, the top of the class, and her friend. They stopped talking when they saw him. Gina was Thalorian, her insectoid features sharp and intelligent. She looked at Taman with something like curiosity. Her friend just looked away. Gina said, "Better luck next time." But her tone said she did not believe there would be luck. Not for him. Taman kept walking. His quarters were in the upper levels where the families of officials lived. Large windows showed the stars outside. His room had everything he could want: books, technology, comfort. But right now it felt like a prison. He threw his datapad across the room. It bounced off the wall and clattered to the floor. All those study notes, all those hours of practice, useless, all of it was useless. A soft chime sounded. His father was at the door. Taman considered not answering. But he could never do that. He pressed the button and the door slid open. Governor Hyunwoo stood in the doorway. He was tall, even for a Velcran. His robes marked him as one of the most powerful beings in the Galactic collective. But right now he just looked like a tired father. "May I come in?" he asked. Taman stepped aside. His father entered and the door closed behind him. They stood in silence for a moment. The space between them felt vast. Hyunwoo finally said, "I do not understand. You have the best tutors, the best equipment, every advantage I can provide. Why do you keep failing?" Taman wanted to explain. But how could he? He did not understand it himself. The words stuck in his throat. He just shook his head. Hyunwoo sighed. He placed a hand on his son. The touch was gentle, but it felt heavy. "Instructor Bora spoke to me. You have one more chance, one final test. If you fail again..." He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Expulsion. Shame. The end of everything his family had worked for. Taman knew. "I expect better from you," his father said. Then he turned and left. Taman stood alone in his room. The stars outside seemed very far away. He felt small, broken, like one of those machines he could not fix. Sleep would not come that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the test over and over. What had he missed? Where had he gone wrong? The questions circled in his mind like vultures. At some dark hour, Taman gave up on sleep. He pulled on simple clothes and left his quarters. The station was quiet at night. Most people were asleep. The corridor stretched empty before him. He walked without direction. His feet carried him down past the residential levels, down past the commercial areas, down to places he had never been. The maintenance levels were different. The walls here were not polished. Pipes ran along the ceiling, some of them hissing with steam. The lighting was dim and yellow. Everything hummed with the sound of machinery. Taman had never been here before. The elite did not come to the maintenance levels. But something drew him forward. Maybe he wanted to be somewhere unfamiliar. Somewhere he did not have to be the failing son. He turned a corner and stopped. An old human sat on the floor, surrounded by tools and open panels. Power conduits spread across the wall like metallic vines. The human was humming to himself, a strange tune Taman had never heard. The human reached into the mess of wires without looking. His hands moved with sure confidence. He pulled one wire, pushed another. A panel sparked suddenly, bright and loud. The human did not flinch. He made a sound like he was talking to the machine. Then he pulled out a simple hand tool and made one small adjustment. The conduit stopped sparking. The hum of the machinery changed. It became smoother, steadier. The human nodded to himself and started putting his tools away. Taman could not help himself. He stepped closer. "How did you know what to fix?" The human looked up. His face was weathered, marked with age lines that humans got. His hair was more gray than black, but his eyes were sharp and kind. He seemed surprised to see a well-dressed Velcron down here. The human repeated the question. "Know what to fix?" I listened. The sound was wrong. Too much vibration in the lower conduits. Felt the heat pattern, traced it back to the source. He tapped his temple, understanding how energy flows. "That is all." Taman stared at him. "But you did not use any diagnostic equipment." "No scanners, no computer analysis." The human smiled. It was a warm expression. Tools can lie. Sensors can break. But physics never lies. If you understand how things work, really understand, you do not need fancy equipment. Something in those words struck Taman like a physical blow. Understanding. Real understanding. Not just memorizing procedures. Not just following steps. Actually knowing why things worked. The human stood up, brushing off his worn coveralls. "You're upset about something." "I can see it." Taman hesitated. Then the words poured out. "I failed another test today. The 5th one. I had all the best tools. I knew all the procedures, but I could not fix the problem." "I never can." The human nodded slowly. "Let me ask you something. Did you understand what was actually broken? Or were you just trying to match the problem to procedures you memorized?" Taman opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. He did not know. He honestly did not know. The human said, "I am Donghae. I fix things here. Have for 40 years. If you want, I can teach you. Not the academy way. My way. But it is hard work. And you have to forget a lot of what you think you know." Taman looked at this old man in his grimy coveralls, standing in a forgotten corner of the station. Every instinct told him this was foolish. What could a mechanic teach him that elite instructors could not? But he remembered the way Donghae had fixed those conduits. No tools, no scanners, just understanding. And he thought about the red light blinking above the test chamber door. "Yes," Taman said. "Please teach me." Donghae smiled again. "Good. Come back tomorrow night. Same time, bring nothing but yourself. We start simple." Taman made his way back to the upper levels as the station began to brighten. He was tired, but for the first time in months he felt something other than despair. Maybe there was another way. Maybe he did not have to be like everyone else to succeed. Maybe this strange old human had found something that the whole Galactic collective had forgotten. Hope was a dangerous thing. But as Taman reached his quarters and looked out at the stars, he let himself feel it anyway. The next night, Taman returned to the maintenance level. He found Donghae in the same corridor, working on a different section of wall. The old human looked up when Taman approached and smiled. "You came," Donghae said. "Good, that means you are serious." He reached behind him and pulled out a broken piece of equipment. It looked like a water pump covered in grime and corrosion. He handed it to Taman along with a basic toolkit. "Simple tools, a wrench, a screwdriver. Nothing advanced. Fix it," Donghae said. Taman looked at the pump, then at the tools. He reached for his handheld scanner, the one he always carried. Before he could pull it out, Donghae gently took his wrist. No sensors, no diagnostics, just your eyes, your ears, and your hands. "But how am I supposed to know what is wrong without data?" Taman asked. Donghae sat down on the floor, leaning against the wall. "Look at it." "Really look." "What do you see?" Taman felt frustrated. This was impossible. But he sat down across from Donghae and examined the pump. At first he saw nothing useful, just a broken machine. Then slowly he started to notice things. There were water stains on one side, dark mineral deposits around a joint. One section of the casing was slightly warped. "Water stains," Taman said. "There is a leak." "Good, where is the leak?" Taman followed the stain patterns. They led to a specific seal. He pointed. Good, Donghae said again. Now why did the seal fail? Taemin looked closer. The warped section of casing was near the seal. Heat damage. Something had gotten too hot. Heat, he said. The pump overheated. The seal could not handle it. And why did it overheat? Taemin thought about it. Water pumps overheated when they worked too hard, when there was resistance. He looked at the intake valve. It was partially blocked with mineral buildup. The intake was blocked. The pump had to work harder. It overheated. Donghae nodded, pleased. Now you understand the problem. Not just the symptom. The real problem. Fix it. Taemin spent the next hour working on the pump. He cleaned the intake, replaced the seal, straightened the warped casing as best he could. When he was done, Donghae handed him a container of water. Taemin poured it in and activated the pump. It hummed to life, working smoothly. He looked up at Donghae, surprised. It works. Of course it works. You understood the problem? That is what matters. Over the following weeks, Taemin came to the maintenance level every night. Donghae gave him different broken things to fix. Each one taught him something new, not just about the machines, but about how to think. One night, Donghae explained his philosophy while they worked on a power regulator. Advanced civilizations forget the basics. They have tools for everything. Sensors that tell them what is wrong. Computers that calculate solutions. But what happens when those tools fail? Or when the problem does not match their databases? They cannot solve it, Taemin said. Exactly. But if you understand the fundamental principles, you can solve almost anything. Physics does not change. Energy flows in predictable ways. Materials have properties. Learn those things and you can fix what others cannot. Taemin realized why he had been failing his tests. He had memorized procedures, when to use which tool, what readings meant what problems. But he never understood why. When a situation did not match his training exactly, he had been lost. I was following recipes, he said. Not learning to cook, Donghae laughed. Good way to put it. Yes, the academy teaches recipes. I am teaching you to understand ingredients. As the days passed, Taemin felt himself changing. He started noticing things he had never paid attention to before. Walking through the station corridors, he could tell when a ventilation system was running inefficiently just by the sound. He could feel slight temperature variations that indicated energy waste. The station became readable to him in a new way. At the academy, his classmates began to notice the change too. During a group project, they were trying to calibrate a sensor array. The standard procedure was not working. Everyone was frustrated. Taemin looked at the array. He thought about what Donghae had taught him. The problem is not the sensors, he said. It is the power supply. The voltage is fluctuating. Gina looked at him skeptically. How do you know? The diagnostics do not show that. Look at the response pattern. It is too irregular. That only happens with unstable power. They checked the power supply. Taemin was right. Once they stabilized it, the array calibrated perfectly. Gina stared at him with something like surprise. How did you figure that out? She asked. Taemin shrugged. I just looked at what was actually happening instead of what the tools said. One evening, Taemin arrived home late, his hands dirty from working with Donghae. His father was waiting in the common area. Hyunwoo looked at his son with concern and confusion. Where have you been? Hyunwoo asked. You come home late every night. Your clothes are filthy. What are you doing? Taemin hesitated. Learning. Learning what? From whom? Just learning, Taemin said. He was not ready to explain, not yet. He was not sure his father would understand or approve. Hyunwoo looked like he wanted to press the issue, but something in Taemin had changed. There was a confidence there that had not been before. The governor decided to trust his son, for now. The following week, a section of the academy lost power during the day. The emergency lights came on, but the main systems were down. Instructors called for technicians. Students stood around waiting. Taemin quietly slipped away from his class. He found the power junction for that section. Others had looked at it already and could not find the problem. The diagnostic panel showed nothing useful, but Taemin did not look at the panel. He looked at the junction itself, listened. One of the relays was clicking in an odd rhythm. He traced the connections and found a loose contact, hidden where the sensors could not detect it. He tightened it with a simple tool. The power came back on. Students cheered. Taemin tried to slip away again, but Instructor Bora had been watching. She approached him. That was you, she said. It was not a question. Taman nodded. How? The technicians could not find the problem. They were looking at data. I looked at the system. Instructor Bora studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly and walked away. But Taman could tell she was thinking, wondering what had changed in this student who had failed so many times. That night, back in the maintenance level, Taman told Donghae about fixing the power junction. The old man smiled with pride. You are starting to see, Donghae said, not just looking, seeing. Then he shared a story. Decades ago, I was part of a crew on a mining colony. The orbital platform started failing. Critical systems breaking down everywhere. The alien engineers could not figure it out because their diagnostic systems were damaged in the initial failure. Without their computers, they were lost. What happened? Taman asked. The human crew saved them. We used basic tools and first principles, traced every system manually, found the problems and fixed them one by one. The alien engineers were amazed. They had better technology, better training, but they had forgotten how to think without it. Donghae looked at Taman seriously. That is what I'm teaching you. Not tricks, not shortcuts. How to think, how to understand. That is the real secret. It is not about the tools you have. It is about knowing how things actually work. Taman felt something settle inside him, a deep understanding. He had been so focused on passing tests, on having the right answers, that he had never learned to think for himself. Donghae was giving him something the academy could not. True knowledge. A few nights later, Donghae gave Taman a real challenge. A cargo loader that had multiple problems. Taman worked on it for hours. No help from Donghae. Just him and the machine and his understanding. He traced each problem to its source, fixed them one by one, used parts from other systems when he needed to, made adjustments that the manuals would never suggest. When he was done, he activated the loader. It worked perfectly. Taman looked at his handiwork. Pride swelled in his chest. Real pride. Not the hollow kind that came from following instructions correctly. He had understood the problem and solved it. Him. Taman. The failing student. Donghae nodded with approval. He did not say anything. He did not need to. His expression said everything. Walking back to his quarters that night, Taman felt different. The weight that had pressed on him for so long was lighter. He was not fixed yet. Not completely. But he was learning. Really learning. His final test was approaching. The one chance to prove himself or face expulsion. Before, that thought had filled him with dread. Now he felt something else. Not quite confidence, but not despair either. Hope. Cautious, careful hope. Maybe he could do this. Maybe Donghae had given him what he needed. Not just skills. Understanding. The ability to see problems clearly and think through solutions. The old human mechanic had taught him a secret. And it was simple. Understand how things work. Trust that understanding. Let it guide you. Taman looked up at the stars through the station windows. Soon he would face his final test. But this time he would not be alone. He carried Donghae with him. Not the man himself, but his teachings. His way of seeing, and maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. The day arrived. Taman stood outside the testing chamber, breathing slowly. His hands were steady. His mind was clear. This was different from before. He was different. The observation gallery was packed. Even more people than last time. Everyone wanted to see if the governor's son would fail again. Taman saw his father in the front row. Hyunwoo's face was tight with worry. Instructor Bora stood near the control panel, watching him carefully. Gina was there too, leaning forward with interest. Other students whispered and pointed. The weight of their attention pressed down, but Taman pushed it away. He thought of Donghae. Focus on the problem, not the audience. Instructor Bora activated the intercom. The simulation will begin in 1 minute. You will be placed in a damaged research vessel. Multiple critical systems have failed. Cascading failures are occurring. You have 2 hours to stabilize the ship. You may use all available tools and equipment. Begin when ready. The door opened. Taman entered the chamber. The simulation materialized around him. A ship corridor filled with smoke and flashing red lights. Alarms screamed from every direction. The floor vibrated with dangerous intensity. For a moment, old panic tried to rise. So many problems. So much chaos. How could he possibly fix this? Then he remembered. Breathe. Observe. Understand. Taman stood still and closed his eyes. He listened to the alarms. Each one had a different pitch, a different rhythm. They were telling him something if he paid attention. He felt the vibrations through his feet, uneven, stronger toward the rear of the ship. He opened his eyes and walked through the ship, not to the diagnostic console where he would have gone before. He walked and looked and listened. The emergency lighting flickered in a specific pattern. The airflow was wrong, coming in bursts instead of steady streams. In the observation gallery, people murmured in confusion. What was he doing? Why was he not using the equipment? Gina leaned even closer, her multifaceted eyes tracking every movement. Taman reached the engineering section. Panels displayed dozens of errors, systems failing everywhere. Life support, navigation, power distribution, environmental controls. A disaster. But Taman saw something others would miss. These failures were not random. They were connected, linked, one problem causing others, like dominoes falling. If he could find the first domino, the one that started it all, he could stop the cascade. He looked past the diagnostic screens. They showed symptoms, not causes. He followed the energy flows in his mind. Power came from the reactor, distributed through the network, fed all the systems. Where was the choke point? Where was everything going wrong? The vibration pattern, the flickering lights, the burst airflow, all pointed to the same place, the main power distribution node. Taman moved to the access panel and opened it. Inside, he saw the problem. A critical relay had partially failed. It was still functioning enough to keep the ship alive, but not enough to maintain stable power. Every system was starving for energy, compensating, failing, recovering, failing again. A death spiral. The standard fix would require a replacement relay. Taman checked the supply locker. No relay. The simulation had made sure of that. This was the test. How would he solve an impossible problem? He thought about what Donghae had taught him. Creative solutions, using what you have. Understanding principles, not just following procedures. Taman looked around. Other systems were failing, but some were less critical. Environmental controls for the cargo bay. Secondary navigation. Backup communications. He could cannibalize parts from those systems. He worked quickly but carefully. Pulled components from 3 different systems. None of them were designed for this use, but he understood how they worked. He understood the principles. With some creative rerouting and clever adaptation, he could make them function as a replacement relay. His hands moved with confidence. Wire here, connect there, bypass this, reinforce that. The solution would never appear in any manual. It violated standard protocols. But it would work. He knew it would work because he understood the physics behind it. In the observation gallery, silence had fallen. Everyone watched, transfixed. They had never seen anyone work like this. No diagnostic tools, no computer assistance, just hands and knowledge and understanding. Governor Hyunwoo gripped the railing in front of him. He could not believe what he was seeing. This was his son? The boy who had failed every test? Taman finished his makeshift relay. He installed it carefully, double-checked the connections. Then he activated it. For a moment, nothing happened. The alarms continued. The lights still flickered. Taman held his breath. Then one by one, the alarms began to quiet. The light steadied. The vibration in the floor smoothed out. System indicators changed from red to amber. From amber to green, life support stabilized. Navigation came back online. Environmental controls resumed normal operation. The cascade had stopped. The ship was safe. A mechanical voice announced, "Simulation complete. Ship stabilized." Time elapsed, 53 minutes. Taman stood in the quiet chamber. He had done it. Not just passed. He had solved the problem in less than an hour, using methods no one had taught him. Methods he had learned in a grimy maintenance corridor from an old human mechanic. The observation gallery erupted. Some people cheered. Others argued. Instructors talked urgently among themselves. Taman saw his father standing, both hands on the railing, staring at him with an expression of complete shock. The chamber door opened. Taman walked out. Instructor Bora waited for him, her face unreadable. "That was not standard procedure," she said. "No," Taman agreed. "It was not. Your solution would not meet safety specifications, but it worked. The ship is stable. Everyone would survive." Instructor Bora studied him for a long moment. Then, to his surprise, she smiled. Just slightly. Yes, it worked. Wait here. She walked away to consult with other instructors. Taman could see them reviewing the simulation recording, pointing, debating. Some looked angry. Others seemed intrigued. Gina approached him. Her insectoid features were hard to read, but her voice held genuine curiosity. How did you do that? She asked. You barely used any of the equipment. You just looked at the ship and knew what to fix. I stopped trying to match problems to solutions I had memorized. I started understanding what was actually happening. But where did you learn that? That is not how they teach here? No, Taman said. It is not. Before Gina could ask more, Governor Hyunwoo arrived. He looked at his son like he was seeing him for the first time. Taman, he said quietly, I need to speak with you, privately. They moved to a small conference room off the main corridor. Hyunwoo closed the door and turned to face his son. What happened to you? His father asked. You are different. Completely different. That solution you created, I have never seen anything like it. Where did this come from? Taman took a breath. Time to tell the truth. I have been studying with someone, a mechanic in the maintenance levels, a human named Donghae. He taught me to think differently, to understand instead of memorize, to see problems clearly instead of relying only on tools. Hyunwoo frowned. A mechanic? A maintenance worker taught you this? Yes, he showed me what I was missing. Real understanding. The academy teaches us procedures and protocols. Donghae taught me principles. His father was quiet for a long moment. Taman could see him processing this information. A lowly human worker had succeeded where the best instructors failed. It challenged everything Hyunwoo believed about education and status. Finally, Hyunwoo spoke. I would like to meet this Donghae. Before Taman could respond, Instructor Bora entered. She looked at both of them. The examining board has made a decision. Your solution was unorthodox, Taman. It violated several standard procedures, but it was effective. It demonstrated deep understanding of system principles. We are not only passing you, we are recognizing your performance as exceptional. Relief and pride flooded through Taman. He had done it. Really done it, Bora continued. However, I have questions. Your approach suggests a teaching method we do not use. I would very much like to know where you learned it. Hyunwoo spoke up. As would I. It seems my son has found an unusual teacher. A human mechanic named Donghae. Instructor Bora looked intrigued. I would like to meet this person. If his methods can transform a struggling student into this, she gestured at the test results, then perhaps we have something to learn from him. Taman felt a mix of emotions, pride that his teacher would be recognized, but also protectiveness. Donghae was a simple man who liked his work. Would he want all this attention? Still, Taman nodded. I can introduce you, but it should be his choice whether to teach others. Of course, Bora agreed. As they left the conference room, Taman thought about the old human mechanic, working in his forgotten corner of the station. Donghae had given him a gift, not just knowledge but a way of seeing the world, a way of thinking. Now that gift might be shared with others. The secret that had saved Taman could help more students, could maybe change how the whole academy taught. But first they had to see if Donghae was willing. The old man had never sought recognition. Would he accept it now? Taman would find out soon enough. Taman led his father and Instructor Bora down into the maintenance levels. The journey took them through parts of the station that important people rarely saw. The polished corridors gave way to functional passages. The soft lighting became harsh and yellow. Hyunwoo looked around with barely concealed discomfort. This was a world he had forgotten existed. The hidden machinery that kept the beautiful upper levels running. Bora observed everything with sharp interest, her mind already analyzing. They found Donghae where Taman expected. The old human was sitting on the floor, tools spread around him working on a coolant system. He hummed that same strange tune, completely absorbed in his work. Donghae, Taman called softly. The human looked up. His weathered face showed surprise when he saw the well-dressed officials. He stood, wiping his hands on his coveralls. Taman, you brought company. This is my father, Governor Hyunwoo. And Instructor Bora from the academy? Donghae nodded politely. He showed no nervousness at meeting powerful people. He was comfortable with who he was. Hyunwoo stepped forward. You taught my son, I shared what I know. Taman did the learning. What you shared transformed him. He passed his final test. More than passed. He solved a problem in a way the instructors have never seen. Donghae smiled at Taman. I am not surprised. He has a good mind, just needed to learn how to use it properly. Instructor Bora spoke. Your teaching methods are clearly effective. I would like to understand them better. How did you teach what our academy could not? Dongi shrugged. I just showed him how to see problems clearly, how to understand instead of memorize. The academy teaches tools and procedures. I taught principles. Would you be willing to teach other students? Bora asked. There are many who struggle like Taman did. Your methods could help them. The old man hesitated. He looked around at his simple workspace, his tools, his machines. This was his world, quiet, uncomplicated. I am just a mechanic, not a teacher. You are a teacher, Taman said. You taught me. You can teach others. Donghae looked at his student, saw the confidence there now, the understanding. He had made a difference in this young life. Could he do the same for others? A trial, Donghae finally said. A small group. I will see if what worked for Taman works for others. But I do it my way, down here in my workshop. No fancy classrooms. Agreed, Bora said immediately. Word spread through the academy quickly. The governor's son had passed his test using methods learned from a human mechanic. Students whispered about it. Some were skeptical. Others were curious. Gina was one of the first to approach Taman. She found him in the common area between classes. I want to meet your teacher, she said without preamble. Why? You are already the top student. You do not need help. I watched you in that test. You saw something I could not see. You understood something I did not understand. I have always succeeded by being thorough and precise, but watching you made me realize I might be missing something important. Taman studied her. Gina was admitting weakness. That took courage for someone who had always been the best. Come tonight. Maintenance level, Section 7. Bring nothing but yourself. That evening, Taman brought Gina to meet Donghae. The old human looked at the Thalorian student with interest. You are the top of your class, Donghae said. Why do you want to learn from a mechanic? Because I watched Taman solve a problem I could not solve. I need to understand how. You will have to unlearn some things. That is harder for someone who has always succeeded. I am willing. Donghae smiled. He handed her a broken device. The same kind of pump he had given Taman on the first night. Fix it. No tools but these. Those scanners, Gina struggled. She was used to having data, analysis, precise measurements. Without those things, she felt lost. But she was determined. She looked. She listened. Slowly, haltingly, she began to see. Over the next weeks, more students came. Some were struggling like Taman had been. Others were simply curious. Donghae took them all. The maintenance level became an unofficial school. The old human taught each student the same way. Simple problems first. No fancy tools. Just observation and understanding. Some picked it up quickly. Others took longer. But they all learned. Taman often stayed to help. He found he enjoyed teaching, passing on what he had learned. Watching others have the same breakthrough he had experienced gave him deep satisfaction. One evening, Governor Hyunwoo came to the maintenance level again. But this time he came alone. He found Taman working with a younger student on a circuit board. May I speak with you? Hyunwoo asked his son. They walked to a quiet corner. Hyunwoo looked at his son with something like wonder. I owe you an apology, the governor said. I put so much pressure on you. I wanted you to succeed, but I defined success too narrowly. I thought it meant following the same path I did. Having the best credentials, using the best technology. I never considered there might be other ways to learn. Other kinds of wisdom. You wanted what was best for me, Taman said. I wanted what I thought was best. But I was wrong. You found your own way, with help from someone I would never have considered. A human mechanic in the maintenance level. It humbles me. And it makes me think about how our whole society might be missing something important. Before Taman could respond, an urgent alarm sounded through the station. Not a drill. A real emergency. The lights flickered. A voice came over the intercom. Priority alert. Research station Kepler 9 has experienced catastrophic system failures. The station is drifting toward planetary atmosphere. All rescue teams report to emergency deployment. This is not a drill. Hyunwoo immediately pulled up his communicator. As a governor, he had access to all emergency information. His face grew grave as he read, This is bad. Very bad. Kepler 9 has thousands of people, researchers and their families. Multiple rescue teams have tried to stabilize the station but failed. The damage is too extensive. Their diagnostic systems cannot map it all. Donghae had come over when he heard the alarm. He looked at the information on Hyunwoo's screen. This is exactly the kind of situation where conventional approaches fail, the old man said. Too many problems for automated systems to handle. Someone needs to go there and solve problems on the spot, without relying on computers and scanners. Taemin and the other students looked at each other. They all understood what Donghae meant. They had been training for exactly this kind of situation without knowing it. I will volunteer, Taemin said. Hyunwoo looked at his son with alarm. Taemin, no. This is too dangerous, Father, I can help. The rescue teams are failing because they are using the same methods that did not work. We know a different way. I will go too, Gina said. The other students nodded in agreement. And I will go, Donghae added. They might need someone with experience. Hyunwoo looked at all of them. Young students and an old mechanic. Could they really succeed where trained professionals had failed? But he remembered how Taemin had solved that test. He remembered the principles Donghae taught. Maybe they could. I will authorize it, the governor said. But Instructor Bora must approve as well. Bora arrived within minutes. She looked at the group of volunteers. Students barely out of training. An old human with no official credentials. It should have been absurd, but she had seen what they could do. She had watched Taemin solve an impossible problem. She had observed how Donghae's students were learning to think in new ways. Go, she said. But be careful. Thousands of lives depend on you. The group rushed to the docking bay. A fast transport was being prepared for emergency deployment. Taemin looked at his father one last time. I will come back, he promised. I know you will, Hyunwoo said, and he meant it. His son was not the failing student anymore. He was someone who understood how things worked. Someone who could solve problems others could not. As the transport launched, carrying its unlikely rescue team toward a dying station, Taemin felt calm. He was scared, yes, but he was ready. Donghae had taught him well. They all had the knowledge they needed. Now they just had to put it to the ultimate test. The research station hung in space like a wounded animal. Lights flickered across its massive hull. Debris drifted around it. The planet below waited with hungry gravity. The group entered the station through the emergency airlock. The scene inside was chaos. Alarms everywhere. People running. Official rescue teams surrounded by equipment looking frustrated and helpless. A commander approached them. Who are you? We did not request more personnel. We are here to help, Donghae said calmly. We have a different approach. The commander looked at the old human, the young students. With respect, we have trained specialists here. If they cannot fix this, what can you do? Let us try, Taemin said. You have nothing to lose. The station is dying anyway. The commander hesitated, then nodded. Time was running out. He would try anything. Donghae gathered the students. He spread out a schematic of the station on a portable display. He said, we split into teams. Each team takes a critical system. Do not try to fix everything. Find the core problems, the ones causing cascades. Use what we learned, observe, understand, improvise, the students nodded. They had trained for this. Not in simulators, in real maintenance corridors with real broken machines. This was just bigger. Taemin, you take the power grid.
Gina, environmental systems.
I will handle navigation and stabilization. The rest of you support where needed. Go. Taemin ran through the station corridors. The power grid was the heart. If it failed completely, nothing else mattered. He reached the main distribution center. Official technicians stood around staring at diagnostic screens. The screens showed a mess of errors, too many to process. The automated repair systems had given up. Taemin ignored the screens. He looked at the actual grid, listened to the hum of the conduits, felt the heat patterns with his hands. The grid was dying in sections, trying to reroute power, failing, trying again. He traced the problem backward, not the symptoms. The cause, there. A cascade failure in the primary distribution nodes. They needed replacement parts that would take days to fabricate. But Taemin had learned from Donghae. Use what you have. Understand the principles. He looked around. The station had backup systems, redundancies. Not for this purpose, but they could be adapted. He started pulling components. Secondary relays, backup conduits, parts that were not meant to work together, but he understood how they worked. He could make them function. His hands moved fast. Connect here. Bypass there. Reinforce this. It was not elegant. It would never pass inspection. But it would work. Elsewhere on the station, Gina worked on environmental systems. The air filtration was failing. But not from mechanical breakdown. She had found something the sensors missed. A biological contamination. Growth in the filters that blocked flow. The automated systems could not see it. But Gina could. She and her team cleared it manually, section by section. Hard work, dirty work. But it worked. Air began flowing properly again. Donghae worked on the navigation systems. This was critical. Without navigation control, the station could not adjust its trajectory. It would fall no matter what else they fixed. The damage was extensive. Circuits burned out. Connections severed. The old human traced each problem patiently. His decades of experience guided him. He knew these systems, not this exact model, but the principles were the same. He rebuilt the control pathways using whatever he could find. Wire from storage, components from non-essential systems. His repairs looked like a mess, but they followed sound engineering principles. They would hold time tick down. The station dropped lower. The atmosphere began to grab it. Heat started building on the hull. Taman finished his repairs to the power grid. He held his breath and activated the new configuration. For a moment, nothing. Then power began flowing. Steadier, stronger. The lights stopped flickering. Throughout the station, systems began coming back online. Environmental controls stabilized. Life support strengthened. One by one, the cascading failures stopped. Donghae made the final connection in the navigation system. He activated it. The thrusters came to life. The station had control again. The old human ran to the navigation console, calculated the trajectory. They had minutes left. He programmed the thrusters and fired them. The station began to turn. Slowly. Too slowly. The planet pulled harder. Heat built faster. But the thrusters kept firing. The trajectory shifted. Degree by degree. Everyone on the station felt it. The change. The shift. They were moving away from the planet, not much. But enough. The station cleared the atmosphere by less than a kilometer. Alarms finally began to quiet. Systems stabilized completely. They had done it. The station was safe. Taman found Donghae in the navigation center. The old man was leaning against a console, breathing hard. But he was smiling. "We did it," Taman said. "You did it. All of you. You understood the problems. You found solutions. Just like I taught you." The commander approached them. His expression was one of complete disbelief. "How? My best teams could not do it. But you, a handful of students and an old mechanic, you saved the station. How?" "We used a different approach," Donghae said. "Your teams relied on their tools. When the tools failed, they were lost. We relied on understanding. That never fails." News of the rescue spread across the Galactic collective. The story captivated billions. A group of students and an old human mechanic had succeeded where advanced teams failed. It became a symbol, a reminder of something important. Donghae became famous, though he hated it. Reporters wanted interviews. Officials wanted to honor him. He refused most of it. He just wanted to return to his workshop. But one thing he accepted. Governor Hyunwoo proposed a change to the education system. His methods would be integrated into the curriculum. Students would learn to understand, not just memorize, to think, not just follow procedures. The proposal passed with overwhelming support. The rescue had proven the value of this approach. The Galactic Collective began to change how it taught. Taman was offered a position as an instructor at the academy. He would teach the new curriculum. Practical problem solving, first principles thinking. He accepted, knowing he could help others who struggled like he once did. Months passed. The changes took hold. Students learned differently now. They spent time in workshops, not just classrooms. They learned with their hands, not just their minds. They learned to see and understand. One evening, Taman went down to the maintenance level. He found Donghae in his usual spot, working on a stubborn coolant system. The old man looked up and smiled. "You came back." "I always come back. This is where I learned what really matters." Taman sat down and picked up a tool. They worked together in comfortable silence. Teacher and student. Now also friends. After a while, Donghae spoke about the secret he had taught. It was not just about understanding how things work. The real secret was simpler. He had taught Taman to trust himself, to believe that he could understand problems and solve them. Everything else was just applications of that. Taman thought about that. It was true. The tools, the methods, the principles, they were all important. But the biggest change had been internal. He had learned to trust his own mind, to believe in his ability to figure things out. "You gave me more than knowledge," Taman said. "You gave me confidence. You always had it. You just needed to find it." Years later, the changes Dong-A had started continued to spread. A whole generation grew up learning his way. Critical thinking, problem solving, understanding instead of memorization. Humanity's reputation in the collective grew. Other species recognized the value of human practical wisdom. The humans were not the most advanced technologically, but they excelled at solving problems, at adapting, at making things work. Taman became one of the most respected educators in the galaxy, but he never forgot where he learned. In a grimy maintenance corridor, from an old man who worked with his hands, who understood that true intelligence was not about tools or credentials. It was about seeing clearly and thinking well. Sometimes late at night he would return to that corridor. Dong-A would be there, still working, still humming, still finding joy in understanding how things worked. They would work together in the dim light. No words needed, just the quiet satisfaction of solving problems, of understanding, of using knowledge the right way. And Taman would remember. The red light blinking above the test chamber, the despair he had felt. The moment he met an old human mechanic who changed everything. The secret had been simple all along. Understand how things work. Trust that understanding. Let it guide you. Everything else was just details.